My name is Joe Mackenzie. I'm 66 years old, and I live in Chicago, Illinois. I spent 40 years as a heavy-duty construction foreman. Steel beams, concrete pours, skyscrapers rising from mud and noise. The kind of work that makes your bones ache and your hearing fade, but leaves something permanent against the sky when you're done. I built things that lasted. That was my job. That was my pride. And when I finally hung up my hard hat 4 years ago, I thought my building days were over. Turns out, I had one more project left in me, the most important one I'd ever take on. Her name is Daisy. She's 5 years old now. My daughter, my miracle, my final project. I never expected to be a father at 61. Life had other plans for me when I was younger. A first marriage that ended quietly and sadly 20 years back. No children, just two people who grew apart like buildings on opposite blocks. I thought that chapter was closed. Then I met Sloan at a gym 1 year into my retirement. She was 27, full of energy, all brightness and discipline. We married fast, and Daisy came along about 2 years later. That little girl changed everything. I built her bedroom myself, reinforced the walls with extra studs, soundproofed it so traffic noise wouldn't wake her, painted it soft yellow like morning sun. I even carved her a wooden toy truck from oak, sanded it smooth so no splinter could ever touch her skin. Every detail mattered. Every joint had to be perfect. Because if there's one thing 40 years on construction sites taught me, it's this. A strong foundation means everything. You cut corners on the base. The whole structure comes down eventually. Doesn't matter how pretty you paint the outside. I believed in that principle. In my work, in my home, in my family. But here's the truth I learned the hard way. Sometimes the rot starts where you can't see it. Behind the walls, under the surface, in the spaces you thought were solid. And by the time you notice the cracks, the damage is already done. If you've ever built something with your own hands, a house, a career, a family, and you know what it means to protect it, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to hear more real stories from a man who's lived through the consequences of trust misplaced. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I want to know who's out there listening, because this story isn't just mine. It's about what happens when the person you trust most turns out to be the hidden flaw in everything you built, and how a man deals with it when he finally sees the truth. Let me start from the beginning. I never thought I'd find love again at 60, but there she was, Sloan, sweating through a workout like it was war. This was 1 year into retirement. I joined a gym on the South Side because sitting at home was driving me crazy. 40 years of 10-hour days, and suddenly I had nothing but time. My body didn't know what to do with silence. Sloan was doing deadlifts in the corner, perfect form, focused. She had this intensity about her, like every rep mattered more than it should. I watched her for a few sessions before I said anything, not in a creepy way, just noticed her, the way you notice good craftsmanship. One morning, she asked if I could spot her on the bench press. I did. We talked after. She asked what I used to do. I told her about the construction. She said she could tell by my hands. They're real hands, she said, not like the guys on Instagram. She was 27 then, a fitness influencer with maybe 30,000 followers, posted videos about clean eating and discipline and mind-body purity. She'd mentioned sometimes that she'd had more followers once, closer to 50,000, but lost them when she got inconsistent. I didn't understand half of what she talked about, but I liked listening to her. She had this way of making even small things sound important. We started having coffee after workouts. She'd talk about her platform, her goals, her belief that the body was a temple you had to maintain. I'd tell her stories about cranes and concrete, about the satisfaction of building something from nothing. She seemed fascinated by it. By me, maybe. I wasn't naive. I knew what people would think. Old guy, young woman. But I didn't care. I'd spent my whole life not caring what people thought, and I wasn't about to start at 60. We dated for 6 months. I offered stability. She offered energy. It felt balanced, fair. We married at City Hall on a Tuesday morning. No fuss. I bought her a simple ring, platinum, no diamonds. She said she didn't need anything flashy. I'm not that kind of girl, she told me. I believed her. After the wedding, she quit the influencer work, said she wanted to focus on being a wife and, eventually, a mother. That impressed me. Not many women her age would walk away from attention like that. It showed character, I thought. Discipline. I taught her things. How to fix a leaking faucet. How to read a level. How real strength wasn't about aesthetics. It was about endurance. She listened, asked questions. Sometimes I'd catch her staring at me like I was something she was trying to figure out. Looking back, maybe I should have wondered why, but I was happy, happier than I'd been in 20 years. And when she told me she was pregnant 8 months into our marriage, I felt something I'd never felt before. Purpose, clear and undeniable. I was going to be a father. At 61 years old, I was getting a second chance at the one thing I'd always wanted and never had. I thought everything was falling into place. When Daisy came into this world, kicking and screaming, I knew I'd finally built something unbreakable. They handed her to me in the delivery room, this tiny red-faced thing with a grip like a vice. She wrapped her fingers around my thumb and held on. I looked at Sloane, exhausted in the hospital bed, and then back at Daisy, and I felt it. That complete, overwhelming certainty that this was it. This was what everything had been leading to. 40 years of steel and concrete were practiced. This was the real work. I built her bedroom 3 weeks before she was born. Not just painted and furnished, built it. Reinforced the walls with double studs for soundproofing. Installed blackout curtains so city lights wouldn't wake her. Added extra insulation so winter cold wouldn't seep through. I mounted shelves at exact heights, secured with anchors that could hold 10 times the weight they'd ever need to. Every detail mattered. I carved her that wooden truck from a piece of oak I'd saved for 20 years, sanded it for hours until it was smooth as glass. No edges, no splinters, just solid, simple, safe. Sloane thought I was overdoing it. She's a baby, Joe. She won't notice half this stuff, but I noticed. That's what counted. Our days fell into rhythm. I'd wake early, make breakfast while Sloane did yoga in the living room. Daisy would toddle out in her pajamas, hair sticking up in every direction, and climb into my lap while I drank coffee. We'd play rough games. I'd swing her around, let her climb on my shoulders, teach her to be fearless. Sloane didn't always approve. Not so rough, Joe. She's delicate. But Daisy wasn't delicate. She was strong. She'd laugh so hard she'd hiccup, then demand I do it again. In the afternoons, Sloane took over. Healthy play, she called it. Stretching exercises. Balance games. Daisy didn't love it as much, but she obeyed. Sloane had that effect. When she spoke, you listened. Evenings were mine again. I'd read Daisy stories, make-up adventures about a little girl who built castles out of clouds. She'd fall asleep with her hand on my chest, and I'd sit there in the dark, listening to her breathe, thinking I'd never felt more complete. She adored both of us back then, Daddy and Mama, in equal measure. The three of us felt like a solid unit, a foundation that wouldn't crack. But somewhere around her 4th birthday, I noticed something small. Daisy started flinching at loud noises, a door slamming, a truck backfiring outside. My own voice if I laughed too hard. I figured it was my fault. 40 years of construction sites had left me half deaf. I didn't always realize how loud I was. I started trying to be quieter around her, gentler. It helped, I thought, but the truth was, I wasn't seeing the real problem yet. Our days flowed like well-poured concrete, smooth and setting just right, or so I thought. Mornings started with pancakes. I'd make them from scratch while Daisy sat at the kitchen table, swinging her legs and humming to herself. Sloane would come in after her workout, already showered and composed, and pour herself a green smoothie. She never ate the pancakes. Empty carbs, she'd say, but she'd smile when Daisy asked for seconds. Afternoons belonged to Sloane. She'd take Daisy into the living room for what she called enrichment time. Stretches, balance exercises, educational videos about healthy eating. Sometimes I'd hear Sloane's voice through the door, patient but firm. No, sweetie, we don't eat that. It's not good for our bodies. I didn't mind. Discipline was good for kids. I'd been raised with rules, and it hadn't hurt me. Evenings were storytelling time. I'd sit in Daisy's room, her head on my shoulder, and make up tales about construction workers who built bridges to the moon or dug tunnels to the center of the earth. She'd ask questions. How do you make concrete, Daddy? What's the tallest building you ever worked on? And I'd answer every single one. Those were good days, solid days, but there were moments, small things I'd notice and then dismiss, like the time I brought home a chocolate bar for Daisy. Just a treat, normal kid stuff. Sloane saw it, and her face went hard. Joe, we talked about this. Sugar is poison. You're undermining everything I'm teaching her. I apologized. Put the chocolate away. Figured she knew better about nutrition than I did. Or when I mentioned taking Daisy fishing sometime. We could make a weekend of it, I said. Just the two of us. Father-daughter time. Sloane's jaw tightened. She's too young for that, and you should ask me first before making plans. I let it drop. Figured we'd revisit it when Daisy was older. But I noticed Daisy getting quieter. She'd sit on the couch with her hands folded, staring at nothing. And when I'd ask what she was thinking about, she'd just say, "Nothing, Daddy." I asked Sloane if she'd noticed. She waved it off. She's fine, just tired. Growing takes energy. One Saturday, I came back from the hardware store and found Daisy sitting alone in her room, unusually still. I asked what was wrong. She just shook her head. "Nothing, Daddy." Sloane said she'd had a long morning. Kids need downtime, Joe. I believed her. That's the thing about trust. When you've decided someone is solid, you stop checking the foundation. You assume it's all still level underneath. But I'd spent 40 years on job sites. I knew how to spot a bad pour, a weak joint, a load-bearing wall that wasn't carrying its weight. I'd walk a structure and just feel when something was off. And somewhere deep in my gut, beneath the comfort and routine, I was starting to feel it. A shift, a crack, something wrong I couldn't name yet. I just didn't know how deep the damage already went. The cabin air still clung to my clothes, but the chill I felt walking through my door wasn't from the lake. I'd been gone for 3 days. A buddy from the old crew had a place up north. Quiet water, good fishing, no cell service. The kind of trip that clears your head and reminds you what matters. I'd been thinking about taking Daisy up there someday, teaching her to cast a line, showing her how to be still and patient. I came home Sunday evening, arms full of gear, ready to tell them about the bass that got away. Usually, Daisy would hear my truck in the driveway and come running. "Daddy's home!" Feet pounding on hardwood, that bright laugh echoing through the house. This time, nothing. I walked in, set my tackle box down. "I'm back," I called. Sloane appeared from the kitchen, workout clothes on, hair pulled back tight. "Hey, good trip?" "Yeah." "Where's Daisy?" "Her room. She's been quiet today." She said it casually, like it was normal, like our 5-year-old being silent was just another Tuesday. I headed down the hall. Daisy's door was cracked open. I pushed it wider, expecting to see her playing with blocks or coloring. Instead, the room was dim. She was sitting in her closet, knees pulled to her chest, staring at nothing. "Hey, sweetheart, I missed you." She flinched at my voice. Actually flinched. Then she looked up, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Fear. Not me. But I was afraid that I was making noise, fear that someone would hear. "Hi, Daddy," she whispered. I crouched down. "What are you doing in there?" "Resting. Mama said I need to rest more." "Are you feeling sick?" She shook her head. Wouldn't meet my eyes. I reached out to touch her shoulder, and she tensed like she was bracing for something. That's when I knew something was wrong. I found Sloane in the kitchen making one of her smoothies. "Why's Daisy hiding in her closet?" She didn't turn around. "She's not hiding. She's just tired." "From what?" "She's 5. She's been lazy lately, Joe. I've been working with her on discipline, building strength. She needs to push through the weakness." I felt my jaw tighten. "What does that mean, working with her?" Sloane finally looked at me, calm, controlled. "It means I'm teaching her what you and I both know, that strength doesn't come from comfort. She's soft. I'm fixing that. She's a child. which is exactly when habits form. She took a sip of her smoothie. You build buildings, Joe. I'm building character. Same principle. I wanted to argue, but she said it with such certainty, such logic that I hesitated. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe 3 days away had made me forget what normal looked like. But walking back to Daisy's room, hearing her whisper instead of laugh, I couldn't shake the feeling I'd felt 100 times on job sites. Something was shifting under the surface, and if I didn't find it soon, the whole structure would come down. Daisy's eyes, once bright as sightlights, now dimmed like a faulty beam. Over the next few days, I started watching, really watching. It didn't take long to see the pattern. Every morning, Daisy would wake up moving slowly, stiff, like her muscles hurt. She'd come to breakfast and sit carefully, lowering herself into the chair like an old man with a bad back. I'd ask if she wanted to play, and she'd shake her head. I'm tired, Daddy. 5 years old. Tired all the time. Sloan would watch from across the room, sipping her smoothie, and say things like, she had a good workout yesterday. Recovery is part of the process. Workout. For a kindergartner. I'd see Daisy look at her mother, and there was something in that look I couldn't name. Not love, not even fear, exactly. Something closer to obedience. The kind you give when you've learned that resistance costs more than it's worth. One afternoon I found Daisy in the living room, trying to do a plank. Her arms were shaking, sweat on her forehead. She was whispering to herself, I'm not weak. I'm not weak. Hey, what are you doing? She dropped, startled. Mama says I have to hold it for 2 minutes. I can only do 1. You're 5. You don't need to. I'm weak, Daddy. Her voice cracked. Mama says weak people don't deserve treats or fun. They have to get strong first. I felt something cold settle in my chest. That night, I tried talking to Sloan again, kept my voice level, calm. Why is Daisy doing planks? Core strength, discipline. She needs structure. She needs to be a kid. Sloan's face went hard. And what did being just a kid do for all those soft, spoiled children you see everywhere? I'm giving her an advantage, teaching her that the body is a temple, that weakness is a choice. She's 5, which is when it matters most. She leaned forward. You know what I see, Joe? I see a little girl who could be strong, healthy, exceptional, if she'd just push through the lazy parts of herself. I'm helping her. You should be grateful. I didn't answer. I didn't trust myself too, because I'd seen this before, on job sites. A beam that looked fine on the surface, but when you checked the joints, you'd find microfractures, stress cracks, the kind of damage that starts small and spreads until the whole thing fails. You ignore those cracks, people die. The next evening, I sat with Daisy before bed. You doing okay, sweetheart? She nodded. Too quick, too automatic. You can tell me anything. You know that, right? She looked at her hands. Mama does exercises with me at night. After you go to sleep, she says it's our special time. What kind of exercises? I'm not supposed to. She stopped, closed her mouth. Not supposed to what? Tell. That word hung in the air between us like smoke. I tucked her in, kissed her forehead. I walked out of that room with my hands clenched so tight my knuckles ached. I should have been inspecting my own house from the start. Over steak and potatoes, I laid it out plainly. Something's off with our girl, Sloan. She cut her meat, chicken breast for her, no seasoning, and didn't look up. She's fine. She's not. She's withdrawn, exhausted. She won't play anymore. She's learning discipline. She's learning to be afraid. That got her attention. She set down her fork, looked at me with those ice blue eyes. Afraid of what? I don't know yet, but something's wrong. Sloan sighed, the kind of sigh you give a child who won't understand simple math. Joe, you're a good father, but you don't understand health and wellness the way I do. Daisy needs structure. She needs to learn that her body is something she controls, not something that controls her. She's 5, and when I was 5, I was already taking dance classes, training 6 hours a week. It made me who I am. I thought about that, about the woman sitting across from me, the one who couldn't eat a meal without calculating macros, who spent 3 hours a day working out, who'd walked away from her influencer career but still watched other fitness accounts obsessively. still checked her old follower count, still talked about when I had momentum. Is this about you or her? I asked. Her jaw tightened. It's about giving her advantages I didn't have. I was strong, but I wasn't disciplined enough. I let myself slip. Lost followers. Lost relevance. She said it quietly, almost to herself. I won't let her make the same mistakes. She's a child, not a second chance at your career. Sloane's face went cold. I'm done with this conversation. If you can't see that I'm helping her, that's your limitation, not mine. She stood, took her plate, left me sitting there. I ate the rest of my dinner alone, thinking about the jobs I'd walked away from. Sites where the GC cut corners, where inspectors got paid to look the other way, where someone higher up would say, "It's fine, Joe. You're overreacting." And sometimes I'd push back. Sometimes I'd quit. But sometimes I'd let it go. Trusted the people in charge. And then 6 months later, I'd see a news story about a balcony collapse or a ceiling cave-in, and I'd wonder if that was the job, if I could have stopped it. I wasn't going to let that happen here, not with my daughter. After Sloane went to bed, I sat in the dark living room, thinking, planning, treating this like a problem on a site. You can't fix what you can't see. You need evidence, documentation, proof that the structure's failing. I needed to know what was happening in my own house. I needed to see the damage for myself, and I knew exactly how to do it. The question was whether I'd be able to handle what I found, because sometimes when you look close enough at a crack, you realize the whole foundation is rotted through, and then there's no choice but to tear it all down and start over. In 40 years on the job, I learned one truth: ignore the cracks, and the whole thing comes down. I'd seen it happen. A building in Gary, Indiana, 17 stories, beautiful from the outside, glass and steel, clean lines, the kind of thing architects win awards for. But the crew that poured the foundation had rushed it, used substandard rebar, didn't let the concrete cure long enough. I wasn't on that job, but I knew guys who were. They'd told the GC. The GC told the developer. The developer said it was fine. 3 years later, cracks appeared in the parking garage. 6 months after that, they evacuated the building. Cost $18 million to fix. Could have been prevented for $50,000. You can't ignore the foundation, ever. So I treated my house like a job site. First thing Monday morning, I drove to an electronics store on the north side. Told the kid behind the counter I needed a small camera, wireless, motion activated, something I could hide. He showed me 3 options. I picked the smallest one, no bigger than a quarter, built into what looked like a phone charger. Battery lasts about 8 hours on motion activation, he said. Stores footage on a cloud server. You can watch it from your phone. I bought it. Just one. I had a better idea for placement. Back home, Sloane was at the gym. Daisy was at kindergarten. I had the house to myself. I didn't install the camera yet. Instead, I went to my workshop in the basement and pulled out that wooden truck I'd made for Daisy. The oak one she kept on her shelf. Solid piece. Heavy. About 10 inches long. I spent the next 3 hours carefully hollowing out a cavity in the undercarriage. Used a Dremel tool and fine drill bits. Made it just big enough for the camera. Lined it with foam to keep it steady. Fitted the lens flush with a gap in the wooden slats I'd carved to look like a truck bed. When I was done, you couldn't tell unless you were looking for it. I tested it on my phone. Clear picture, wide angle, good sound quality, perfect. That afternoon, I brought the truck back upstairs, wiped it down, set it back on Daisy's shelf, same spot, same angle. Then I activated the camera and set it to record from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. After hours, when I'd be asleep, Sloane put Daisy to bed at 7:30 like always. I read her a story, kissed her goodnight, and closed the door. Went to the living room and watched some documentary about coral reefs with Sloane. She went to bed at 9:30. I followed at 10. I lay there in the dark, phone on my nightstand, knowing that the camera was running. Part of me hoped I was wrong. I hoped I'd check the footage in the morning and see nothing but an empty room and a sleeping child. But the part of me that had spent 4 decades reading blueprints and load calculations knew better. The instinct doesn't lie. With calloused hands, I carved out the truth's hiding spot in that toy truck. The next morning, I checked the footage, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, sitting in my truck in the driveway before Sloan woke up. 10:47 p.m., motion detected. I watched Sloan's face appear in the frame, lit by the hallway light behind her. She moved quietly into Daisy's room. I stood over the bed. "Wake up, sweetheart." My stomach dropped. I watched for 3 minutes, saw enough to confirm what Daisy had hinted at. The midnight exercises, the whispered instructions, the manipulation. I stopped the video, sat there with my hands shaking. This was real. This was happening, and I had proof. But one night of footage wasn't enough. Not for what I needed to do. I needed a pattern, undeniable evidence that this wasn't a one-time thing. I needed to document everything, so I kept the camera running. I checked the footage every morning in my truck before going inside, took notes on my phone, timestamps, what happened, what was said. During the day, I acted normal, made breakfast, played with Daisy when she'd let me, talked to Sloan about nothing, weather, groceries, the neighbor's new fence. She had no idea I knew. The truck sat on Daisy's shelf, innocent and unnoticed. Just a toy her father had made with love. Sloan walked past it a dozen times a day and never gave it a second glance. That was the thing about good hiding spots. They weren't clever or complicated. They were obvious, right out in the open, part of the scenery. I'd learned that on construction sites too. You want to hide a structural flaw from inspectors? Don't cover it with something suspicious. Blend it into the normal framework. Make it look like it belongs. The camera blended perfectly. By the end of the first week, I had 7 nights of footage, 7 instances of Sloan waking Daisy, putting her through exercises, manipulating her into silence. The pattern was clear, consistent, systematic. This wasn't tough love or misguided parenting. This was abuse, calculated, deliberate, hidden. And every night I downloaded the clips onto my laptop, backed them up on a thumb drive. I stored 1 copy with my buddy up north, 1 in a safety deposit box at the bank, 1 on a cloud server Sloan didn't know existed. I wasn't taking any chances. If she somehow found out, if she tried to destroy the evidence, I'd have copies she couldn't touch, because I'd seen what happened when evidence disappeared. Contractors who'd hide shoddy work, developers who'd destroy inspection reports, people who'd lie and manipulate and gaslight their way out of accountability. Not this time. I had the proof, multiple copies, time-stamped and dated. All I had to do now was keep watching, keep documenting, build a case so airtight that when I finally acted, there'd be no question about what had happened, no room for doubt, no space for lies, just the truth, clear and undeniable, the way it should be. Watching that screen was like staking out a faulty scaffold, tense, but necessary. I'd check the footage every morning, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, sitting in my truck in the driveway before Sloan woke up. I didn't want her catching me. I didn't want her to know I was watching. The pattern never changed. 10:30 p.m., every single night, motion detected. Sloan would enter the room, wake Daisy, put her through 30 minutes of exercises. Then she'd whisper things I could barely hear on the audio at first. But by the second week, I'd figured out how to boost the volume. That's when I heard the worst of it. "If you tell Daddy, he'll be so disappointed in you. He'll think you're weak. We don't want that, do we?" Daisy would shake her head. "Good girl. This is our secret, our special time. It's making you strong." By night 9, I caught something else. Sloan set up her phone on Daisy's dresser, filmed the whole session. Later that day, I saw her in the living room, watching the footage on her phone, scrutinizing every angle. She never posted it anywhere. I checked her accounts, all dormant, but she watched it like she was planning to, like she was preparing, building content, rehearsing the comeback. My daughter wasn't a child to her. She was a product, a proof of concept, the ultimate influencer content. Watch me raise the perfect, disciplined, strongest child you've ever seen. Night 11, Daisy threw up. In the middle of a burpee set, just collapsed and vomited on her carpet. Sloan didn't comfort her, just said, "Clean it up, then finish your reps." I sat in my truck, hands shaking, watching my 5-year-old wipe up her own vomit and then get back into position for more exercises. Night 13, I heard Daisy crying, not loud, just quiet, exhausted sobbing. Sloan told her, "Tears are weakness leaving the body. Let it out, then get stronger." I wanted to storm inside, drag Sloan out of that house, but I didn't, because I'd learned a long time ago, you don't confront a problem until you have all the evidence. You document, you gather proof, you build an airtight case. Otherwise, people lie, they twist things, they make you look like the crazy one. So I waited. During the day, I acted normal, made breakfast, played with Daisy when she'd let me, talked to Sloan about nothing. One evening, Daisy came to me while Sloan was in the shower, climbed into my lap. She was so light, too light. "Daddy?" "Yes, sweetheart." "Am I strong?" My chest tightened. "You're the strongest person I know. Mama says I'm getting stronger, but I'm always tired." "I know, baby." She says tired means it's working. Daisy looked up at me. "Is that true?" I wanted to tell her no, wanted to tell her that what her mother was doing was wrong, that no child should be exhausted all the time. But I couldn't. Not yet. Not until I had everything I needed. "You're doing great," I said instead. I hated myself for it. That night, I kept watching, because I needed more than 2 weeks. I needed enough evidence that when I finally acted, there'd be no question about who was right. The first night on tape hit me like a falling beam, pure cold shock. I knew something was wrong, suspected it. I felt it in my gut, but seeing it, actually watching it happen, was different. By the 3rd week, I sat down and watched the full compilation. 21 nights, start to finish, every moment. I needed to see exactly what I was dealing with. The progression was systematic, methodical, like watching someone execute a plan. Night 1, gentle coercion. "Come on, sweetheart, just a few exercises." Night 5, harsher, language. "Stop crying. Weak children cry." Night 10, direct threats. "If you tell your father, he'll know how pathetic you really are." Night 15, complete psychological control. Daisy didn't even resist anymore. Just got up, did the exercises, took the abuse, climbed back into bed. Night 18, that was the one that broke me. Daisy was doing planks. Sloan's voice was calm and measured. 2 minutes. Don't stop. At 45 seconds, Daisy's arms gave out. She collapsed onto the carpet, and before Sloan could say anything, Daisy whispered, "I'm sorry, Mama. I'm so weak. I'm so sorry." She was apologizing for being a child, for having limits, for being human. I sat there in my truck, staring at that frozen frame, and I thought about trust. I'd trusted Sloan with the most important thing in my life, given her access to my daughter, my home, my peace of mind. I'd believed she was building something good, but she wasn't building. She was destroyed, taking everything innocent and pure about Daisy and warping it into something twisted, creating a child who'd grow up believing love meant suffering in silence, that worthiness was conditional, that her own father would abandon her if he knew the truth. I watched Sloan tell my daughter that I, her own father, would be ashamed of her weakness, that I'd love her less if I knew how she struggled, that keeping secrets was a sign of strength. I watched Daisy's face change over 3 weeks, the confusion, the fear, the exhaustion, and finally, the blank acceptance of someone who'd stopped fighting, because fighting only made it worse. She was 5 years old, and my wife had broken her, not with violence. Sloan never hit her, never left marks, but with something more insidious, psychological torture disguised as love, training disguised as care, manipulation so thorough that Daisy believed she deserved it. I closed my laptop, made a phone call, and started planning exactly how to tear down everything Sloan had built, not with my hands, with the truth, because you can fix a cracked beam, replace a faulty joint, shore up a weak foundation. But this kind of psychological destruction takes time, professional help, safety, distance from the person who caused it. And I was going to make sure Daisy got all of that. Starting now, piece by piece, like reinforcing steel, I built my case against the rot. By the end of week 3, I had 21 nights of footage, 21 instances of Sloane waking Daisy, putting her through exercises, manipulating her into silence. The clips were consistent. Same time every night, same routine, same psychological games. But there were variations that made it worse. At night 9, Sloane filmed herself, set up her phone on Daisy's dresser, facing them both, and recorded the workout. I'd seen her later in the living room, watching the footage, scrutinizing every angle. She never posted it. She didn't have the followers anymore, but she watched it like she was planning to, like she was building her comeback. I went back through screenshots I'd taken of other moments, looked closer at what was on Sloane's phone screen in some of the clips. Instagram, her old account, still scrolling, still watching other influencers with hundreds of thousands of followers doing fitness journey content with their kids. She hadn't abandoned her influencer dreams. She'd just been waiting, building the perfect content, the perfect proof. Daisy wasn't her daughter. Not really. She was a comeback vehicle, a transformation story, the perfect content for a fitness influencer trying to rebuild relevance. Watch me raise the strongest, healthiest, most disciplined child you've ever seen. She'd told me once that her biggest mistake was being inconsistent, not committing fully to the lifestyle. She wasn't making that mistake with Daisy. I documented everything, took detailed notes on every exercise, every manipulation, every threat, organized the clips by date, added timestamps, created a spreadsheet tracking the escalation, how the language got harsher, how Daisy's resistance faded, how Sloane's control became absolute. I made multiple backups. I stored one at my buddy's place up north, one in a safety deposit box at the bank, one on a cloud server Sloane didn't know about. Then I sat down and thought about what came next. This reminded me of a job in Detroit. High-rise condo building, beautiful on the outside, but when we opened up the walls for renovation, we found black mold everywhere. In the insulation, the drywall, the wooden studs, the whole structure was compromised, hidden, festering. The owner knew, had covered it up with fresh paint and new fixtures, sold units to families, knowing they were moving into a toxic environment. When it came out, he lost everything. Criminal charges, civil suits, bankruptcy, because you don't hide rot. You can paint over it, cover it up, pretend it's not there. But eventually, it spreads. And when people find out you knew and did nothing, there's no forgiveness. Sloane thought she was building something, creating some kind of perfect child she could showcase, restart her career with. But she was destroyed, systematically, methodically, and I had proof of every single moment. I could go to the police, show them the footage, let the system handle it, or I could make sure Sloane understood exactly what she'd done, make sure she paid for it in ways that mattered, publicly, permanently. I'd spent my whole life following rules, building things the right way, but this was my daughter, and I was done waiting. Seeing my little girl tremble under those commands, my blood ran cold, like ice in the veins. I waited until Sloane took Daisy to a pediatric checkup, told them I had errands to run. Instead, I went home, locked the doors, closed the blinds, and sat down at my kitchen table with my laptop. 21 nights of footage. I was going to watch it all again, start to finish, every moment, make sure I hadn't missed anything. I needed to see the complete picture. The first few clips I'd already seen dozens of times, but watching them in sequence, one after another, showed me the full architecture of what Sloane had built. A system, calculated and cruel. Night 1, gentle coercion. Come on, sweetheart. Just a few exercises. Night 5, harsher language. Stop crying. Weak children cry. Night 10, direct threats. If you tell your father, he'll know how pathetic you really are, just like he was before he learned to be strong. That detail stopped me. She wasn't just manipulating Daisy, she was weaponizing me, using my own image, my own history, my own supposed weakness as a tool to control our daughter. Night 15, complete psychological control. Daisy didn't even resist anymore, just got up, did the exercises, took the abuse, climbed back into bed. I watched Daisy's face change over 3 weeks. The confusion turned to fear, turning to exhaustion, turning to blank acceptance. There was a moment on night 18 that made me pause the video again. Daisy was doing planks. Her arms gave out. She collapsed. And before Sloan could say anything, Daisy whispered, "I'm sorry, Mama. I'm so weak. I'm so sorry." She was apologizing for being a child, for having limits, for being human. I sat there in my kitchen, staring at that frozen frame, and I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Not just anger, not just betrayal, helplessness. The realization that while I'd been sleeping peacefully, trusting, believing, everything was fine, my daughter had been suffering in ways I couldn't prevent because I didn't even know it was happening. All the mornings I'd kissed Sloan goodbye and told her I loved her while she planned the next torture session. All the times Daisy had looked at me with those tired, empty eyes, and I'd just told her to get more rest. I'd failed her, not because I didn't care, but because I'd trusted the wrong person, given access to someone who saw my daughter as a business plan instead of a human being. I thought about trust, how I'd given Sloan the most important thing in my life, how I'd believed she was building something good, but she'd been destroyed, taking everything innocent about Daisy and warping it, creating a child who'd believe love meant suffering in silence. That worthiness was conditional. That strength meant never showing weakness. I closed my laptop, made a phone call, and started planning exactly how to tear down everything Sloan had built, not with violence, not with anger, with truth and consequences. It wasn't love driving her. It was like and following, twisting my daughter into a prop. I wondered why. That was the question I kept coming back to. Why would someone do this to a child? What could possibly justify it? Then I remembered the videos. Night 9. Sloan filmed herself with Daisy, watching the footage later, scrutinizing every angle. I went back through my phone, found screenshots I'd taken, looked closer at what was on Sloan's phone screen in some of the clips. Instagram, her old account, the one she'd supposedly abandoned when we got married. Except she hadn't abandoned it. She'd just stopped posting, but she was still there, still scrolling, still watching other influencers with hundreds of thousands of followers doing fitness journey content with their kids, mothers showing off their healthy families, kids doing yoga, meal prep videos, raising strong, disciplined children content, and the engagement was massive. Millions of views, sponsorship deals, the kind of success Sloan had once tasted and lost. I pulled up her account on my laptop. Private now, dormant. The last post was 4 years ago, a gym selfie with a caption about new chapters. But I remembered the conversations we'd had before Daisy was born, even during our dating phase. I could have been huge, she'd told me once, unprompted while we were having coffee. I had momentum, 50,000 followers at my peak. Brands were starting to reach out, but I wasn't disciplined enough. I'd post something, then disappear for weeks. My engagement dropped. Followers left. I lost everything. I'd asked if she missed it. Every single day, she'd said. Then she looked at me. But I'm building something more important now. At the time, I thought she meant our relationship, our family. Now I understand. She'd meant Daisy, the perfect comeback story, the ultimate proof of her methods. A child transformed through discipline and wellness into living evidence that Sloan's approach worked. She wasn't torturing Daisy out of cruelty. She was grooming her, creating a performance, building a product she could eventually showcase to the world and say, "Look what I built. Look what proper discipline can create. Look what you could have if you followed my program." I thought about the way she filmed those workouts, the angles she chose, the lighting. It wasn't documentation. It was a rehearsal. She was planning to go public eventually, restart her account, show the world her miracle method of raising a perfect child. And Daisy, exhausted, manipulated, psychologically shattered Daisy, would be the proof, the before and after, the testimonial. My daughter wasn't a person to her. She was content, a business plan, the vehicle for Sloan's return to relevance. She'd married me for stability, for the house and the security, and the respectable life that would make her look good on social media when she was ready to return. And she'd had Daisy because a transformed child was the ultimate influencer content. I'd spent 40 years working with people who cut corners for profit, developers who'd sacrifice safety for speed, contractors who'd use substandard materials to save money. I knew what it looked like when someone valued appearance over reality, and that realization made what I was about to do a whole lot easier. I didn't swing a hammer in anger. I planned the takedown like a controlled implosion. Monday morning, I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, Frank Bellamy, a guy I'd known for 30 years. We'd worked together on a lawsuit against a developer who'd refused to pay out after a site accident. Frank was thorough, ruthless when he needed to be, fair when he could be. I told him everything, showed him the footage. He watched 3 clips and said, "This is child abuse, psychological and physical. Document everything, Joe. Every second. We're going to bury her." We spent 2 hours in his office. He drafted eviction papers. The house was in my name, purchased before the marriage. He prepared a restraining order, started paperwork for an emergency custody hearing. "When do you want to serve her?" he asked. "Saturday," I said. 2 p.m. He raised an eyebrow. "Specific." "She's hosting a webinar that afternoon. Holistic Family Wellness. She's been promoting it all week on her dormant accounts, reactivated them just for this. 83 people registered last time I checked." Frank smiled, grim, knowing. "You want an audience? I want her to understand what public humiliation feels like, and I want everyone who might have believed her to see the truth. I like it. But Joe," he leaned forward, "this is going to get ugly. She'll fight. She'll lie. She'll make you out to be the villain. Let her try. I've got 21 nights of video evidence." "Good. Keep it safe. Multiple copies. If she gets access to your devices, she'll destroy it." I nodded. Already had backups in 3 locations. Cloud storage she didn't know about. Thumb drives. A copy with my buddy up north. Frank handed me a folder. "These are the papers. The sheriff will serve them Saturday at 2:05. I'll be there as a witness. You need to be out of the house during the confrontation, for your own protection. She can't claim you were threatening or violent if you're not even there. Where do I go?" "Take Daisy somewhere safe. When you come back, Sloan will be gone, legally required to leave. If she refuses, the sheriff arrests her." I sat there, holding that folder, thinking about how many times I'd dismantled structures, taken down scaffolding, supervised controlled demolitions of buildings too damaged to save. This was the same principle. You don't attack with emotion. You don't rush in swinging. You plan. You prepare. You calculate every angle. Then you execute with precision. "One more thing," I said. "The webinar. Can we interrupt it? Play the footage during the stream?" Frank considered. "Technically, yes. It's your property, your camera, your house. Morally, absolutely. Legally?" He shrugged. "She might sue for defamation, but truth is an absolute defense. And that footage is true. Then that's what we do." I left his office with a plan as solid as any blueprint I'd ever followed. Saturday, 2 p.m. Sloan would be on camera, talking about healthy families and strong children, and the world would see exactly what kind of mother she really was. No yelling, no violence, no drama, just consequences. One more night of that footage, and I knew the structure had to come down. It was Thursday, 2 days before the confrontation. I was lying in bed next to Sloan, both of us awake in the dark. She was scrolling through her phone, probably checking registrations for the webinar. I was pretending to sleep. My phone buzzed. Motion detection. 11:23 p.m. I waited until Sloan's breathing evened out. Then I slipped out of bed, went to the bathroom, locked the door, and pulled up the feed. There she was, moving through Daisy's room like a shadow, waking her up. The same routine I'd watched 21 times before. But this time, Daisy didn't get up. "I can't, Mama," she whispered. "I'm too tired." Sloan's voice went cold. "You're not tired. You're lazy. Get up. Please, just tonight. I'll do extra tomorrow. You'll do what I say when I say it. Now get up." Daisy started crying. Not loud. She'd learned not to be loud. Just quiet, broken sobbing. And Sloan grabbed her arm, pulled her out of bed, forced her to stand. "Stop crying, right now, or I'll give you something to cry about." I watched my daughter stand there, swaying on her feet, tears streaming down her face, while my wife positioned herself into a plank stance. 2 minutes, and if you collapse, we start over. Daisy lasted 30 seconds before her arms gave out. Sloan made her do it again, and again, and again. By the 4th attempt, Daisy was barely conscious, just going through the motions, a trained animal who'd learned that resistance was pointless. When it was finally over, Sloan tucked her back into bed, kissed her forehead, said, "I'm proud of you for pushing through. That's strength. That's what real love looks like." Then she left, and Daisy lay there in the dark, staring at nothing, not sleeping. I sat on the bathroom floor, phone in my hand, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 40 years. Complete helplessness. Not the regular kind where you're frustrated, but you can still act. The deep kind, where you realize that while you were sleeping, trusting, believing everything was fine, someone you loved was suffering in ways you couldn't prevent, because you didn't even know it was happening. I thought about all the nights I'd slept peacefully while Daisy endured this. All the mornings I'd kissed Sloan goodbye and told her I loved her while she planned the next torture session. All the times Daisy had looked at me with those tired, empty eyes, and I'd just told her to get more rest. I'd failed her, not because I didn't care, but because I'd trusted the wrong person. You can forgive yourself for a lot of things. Mistakes, bad judgment, poor timing, but failing to protect your child, that stays with you. I didn't save the footage. I already had 21 nights documented. This was just confirmation. One more piece of evidence that I'd made the right decision. Saturday couldn't come fast enough, not for revenge, not even for justice, for safety, because every night I waited was another night Daisy suffered, and I was done waiting. As her camera rolled, I stepped in. Time to air the real routine. Saturday, 1:45 p.m. I was parked 3 blocks away with Daisy. We'd spent the morning at the zoo, her first real smile in weeks when she saw the penguins. Now she was in the back seat with a coloring book, headphones on, watching cartoons on my phone. Safe, away from what was about to happen. Frank texted me. "Sheriff's in position. She's going to live at 5. I pulled up Sloan's webinar on my laptop. 92 people in the virtual room. Her face filled the screen. Perfect makeup, perfect lighting, perfect smile. Welcome, everyone. I'm so excited to share my family wellness journey with you today. As a mother, I believe our greatest responsibility is raising strong, disciplined, healthy children." I waited. Let her talk. Let her build that image of the perfect mother, the perfect family, the perfect life. At 2:03, Frank gave the signal. I sent him the footage compilation, a 5-minute cut showing the progression across 3 weeks. 30 seconds later, he was at my front door with the sheriff. Sloan heard the knock. She glanced off camera, annoyed. "One moment, everyone." She left the frame. I heard her voice, distant. "Can I help you?" Frank's voice, clear and professional. "Sloan Mackenzie, we need to speak with you. This is being recorded." "I'm in the middle of..." "Ma'am, we have a court order and evidence of child abuse. You need to see this." There was a pause. Then Sloan's voice, confused. "What is this?" "Footage from your daughter's bedroom. 21 nights of documented child abuse, physical and psychological." "That's not... This is insane." "Joe, is this you? Where are you?" The sheriff's voice. "Ma'am, you need to come with us. But first, your audience needs to see this." Frank had already moved to her laptop. I watched through my screen as he took control of the webinar. Sloan's face disappeared, and the footage started playing. Night 1. Sloan wakes Daisy. The exercises, the manipulation, the chat exploded, shocked faces in the thumbnail videos, people typing in all caps, "Is this real? Someone called the police." Oh my God. Frank let it play for 4 minutes. The full progression. Gentle coercion to harsh control. Daisy's face changed from confusion to fear to blank acceptance. Then he appeared on camera. For those watching, my name is Frank Bellamy, attorney representing Joe Mackenzie. What you just witnessed is evidence in an ongoing child abuse case. Sloan Mackenzie is being served with eviction papers, a restraining order, and will face criminal charges. This webinar has concluded. He ended the stream. By the time I got the text, she's in custody. House is clear. The video had already been screen recorded and shared across platforms. Sloan's name was trending by 3 p.m. Her accounts were deleted by 5 p.m. And by the time the sun set, everyone who'd ever followed her knew exactly who she really was. Not through rumors, through her own recorded actions. Truth doesn't need defense. It just needs light. Papers in hand, I laid the final blow, not with fists, but facts. Frank had warned me that emergency custody hearings usually take weeks, but the video evidence changed everything. When you have documented systematic abuse on camera, judges move fast. Monday morning, I showed up with my lawyer, my evidence, and my daughter. Sloan showed up with a public defender and a story about misunderstanding and tough love and how she was just trying to help. The judge watched 5 minutes of footage, stopped it, looked at Sloan. Did you wake this child in the middle of the night to perform exercises? Yes, but did you tell this child that her father would be ashamed of her weakness? I was teaching her. Did you threaten this child into silence? Sloan went quiet. The judge granted full custody to me, permanent restraining order. Sloan couldn't come within 500 feet of Daisy or contact her in any way. Supervised visitation only, pending psychological evaluation. Sloan tried to speak. The judge cut her off. Your lucky criminal charges are still being reviewed. That decision is out of my hands, but I'm making mine clear. You will not have unsupervised access to this child, possibly ever. By Wednesday, the DA filed charges: child endangerment, psychological abuse, reckless endangerment of a minor. Sloan called me Thursday night. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Joe, please, you're ruining my life. I was helping her. I was making her strong. Don't you see that? Call off your lawyer. Let me explain. Let me see my daughter. I deleted it. Friday, she texted, I loved her. I still love her. You're destroying our family. I blocked her number because love doesn't wake a child at midnight to torture them. Love doesn't manipulate and gaslight and break down a 5-year-old's sense of safety and worth. Love protects. Love sacrifices. Love puts the child first. And Sloan had never loved Daisy. She'd loved the idea of what Daisy could become, the content, the validation, the proof of her methods. That's not a mother. That's a narcissist with a camera. The eviction was final by the following Monday. Sloan had 72 hours to remove her belongings. She took her workout equipment, her ring light, her laptop, left everything else. I didn't want it anyway. I packed it up, donated most of it, kept nothing that reminded me of her except the wedding photo. Not for sentiment, but for evidence, in case she ever tried to claim I'd fabricated the marriage. Daisy asked about her once. Where's Mama? I knelt down, looked her in the eyes. She's not coming back, sweetheart. She made some bad choices. Hurt you. And I'm not going to let anyone hurt you. Not ever. Daisy nodded. Didn't cry. Didn't ask again. I think part of her was relieved. And that, more than anything else, told me I'd done the right thing. Not the easy thing. Not a forgiving thing. The right thing. In the woods, away from the rot. We started fresh. Like clearing debris for a new build. 2 weeks after the custody hearing, I took Daisy back to the cabin. Same place I'd gone fishing alone months earlier, before everything fell apart. But this time, she came with me. We spent 4 days there. No schedules, no routines, no rules except the ones that mattered. Be kind, be safe, have fun. First morning I made pancakes, real ones, butter and syrup and chocolate chips mixed into the batter. Daisy stared at them like they might disappear. It's okay, I said. Eat as many as you want. She took one bite, then another. Then she looked up at me. Mama said sugar is poison. Mama was wrong about a lot of things. She ate 3 pancakes, smiled with syrup on her chin. We went fishing. She didn't know how to cast, so I taught her, stood behind her, guided her hands, let her feel the rod flex and the line sail out over the water. When she caught her first bluegill, she screamed so loud it scared the birds out of the trees. I did it, Daddy. I really did it. You sure did, sweetheart. She wanted to keep it. I explained we throw them back so they can grow bigger. She thought about that, then nodded and gently released it into the water, watched it swim away. Do people get second chances too? She asked. I didn't know how to answer that, so I just said, some do, the ones who earn them by changing. At night, we sat by the fire. I taught her how to roast marshmallows, not too close to the flame, just close enough to get them golden. She burned the first 3, got the 4th one perfect, and was so proud she took a picture of it with my phone before eating it. We talked about everything: school, friends, her favorite color, yellow, like sunshine, what she wanted to be when she grew up. Maybe a builder like you, Daddy. I didn't ask about Sloan, didn't bring up the exercises or the midnight sessions or any of it. Frank had already lined up a child psychologist for when we got back. That would come later. Right now, Daisy just needed to be a kid. By the 3rd day, she was running again, laughing, playing in the dirt, climbing trees, being loud and messy and reckless in the way 5-year-olds should be. One evening, she climbed into my lap while we watched the sunset over the lake. Daddy? Yeah? I feel lighter. What do you mean? Like, I don't know. Like I was carrying something heavy and I put it down. I held her tighter. That's called being free, sweetheart. She nodded against my chest. And sitting there, watching the sky turn orange and pink, I realized I felt it too. For 40 years, I'd built things for other people, structures that would last long after I was gone. But this, rebuilding my daughter's sense of safety and joy, this was the most important construction project I'd ever taken on, and I wasn't going to stop until it was perfect. At 66, I've learned, real strength ain't in muscles, it's in spotting the weak spots early. I'm sitting on my porch right now, coffee in hand, watching Daisy play in the yard. She's building something with sticks and mud, some kind of fort, I think. Her hands are dirty, her hair's a mess. She's laughing at absolutely nothing. She looks like a kid again. It's been 3 months since Sloan left. 3 months of therapy for Daisy. Legal battles finally wrapping up. The psychologist says Daisy's doing remarkably well, better than expected. Kids are resilient, she told me, especially when they have someone who fights for them. I think about Sloan sometimes, not with anger anymore, just with clarity. She thought strength was about control, about pushing through pain, about perfection and discipline and never showing weakness. But that's not strength. That's fear dressed up as virtue. Real strength is knowing when to ask for help, when to admit you're wrong, when to protect someone who can't protect themselves, even if it costs you everything. Real strength is doing the right thing when it would be easier to look away. I spent 40 years on construction sites learning to spot structural problems before they became catastrophes. Cracks in concrete, rust on rebar, joints that didn't quite line up. I should have applied that same instinct to my own life sooner, but I learned, and maybe that's the point of mistakes, not to avoid them entirely, but to recognize them faster the next time. Daisy's doing fine now. She'll have scars, the psychological kind you can't see but carry anyway, but she'll heal, with time and patience, and a father who actually loves her more than he loves the idea of her. I've gotten messages from people who saw the webinar footage. Some thanked me for exposing Sloan. Some called me vindictive. Some asked how I could destroy my wife's life like that. I don't engage, because the truth is simple. I didn't destroy her life. She destroyed her own life the moment she decided her daughter was a prop instead of a person. I just made sure everyone else knew it. If you're watching this, and you've ever had to make a hard choice to protect someone you love, hit that like button. If you've ever had to tear down something broken to build something better, subscribe and stick around for more stories. And if you've got your own story about finding cracks in places you trusted, drop it in the comments. Tell me where you're from and what time you're watching. I read every single one, because we're all just trying to build something that lasts, and sometimes that means demolishing what doesn't work, even when it hurts. Daisy just called me over to see her fort. She's proud of it. Says it's strong because she used the biggest sticks. I told her she's exactly right, and I meant it. Strong foundations. Every time. That's how you build something worth keeping.